Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to part 1 for my mobile turn-based RPG Godot tutorial series. In this series, I will be showing you how to make a simple mobile turn-based RPG. We'll cover the basics of UI theming, how to theme your UI so that it all looks good, turn-based battle systems, where you can attack till your action points run out, then the enemy will attack you back, and that's what we'll be covering. If you're interested in learning more about Godot and learning more from me, check out my Kickstarter. There will be a link in the description and probably a card as well. If you're on mobile, you can look at those and learn more about my Kickstarter. Let's get started. So first, you're going to need Godot 3.1, so download it if you don't have it. Also, you'll need these resources, mobile RPG resources. So you can download these as well. There will be a link in the description for those. Let's open up Godot. Let's create a new project. Because we're targeting mobile devices, we'll want this to be OpenGL ES 2.0 right here. And we'll select a folder that we want to create this in. I'd recommend creating a Godot folder, Godot 3 or something. We'll name this Mobile RPG Tutorial. And we'll do create folder, create and edit. Okay. Here's Godot right here. Let's switch to a 2D scene because we're not making a 3D game. We'll need to create a root node. You can see over here. So we'll do a custom node. And we'll call this, if you double click on it slowly, or fast actually, we'll call this battle. And then we need to import in the resources here. So I think we can drag and drop them in. Where'd my folder go? Here we go. Let's see. Drag and drop. I don't think that worked. It was worth a try. So let's just open up Documents, come into Godot, and Mobile RPG Tutorial. Oops, actually, before we import these in, we'll want to set our import settings on textures. If we do this real quick, it will make it a lot easier because you can see currently, if we drag over a texture, it's going to add some blur around the edge of that, and that's not what we want. So if we click on this icon right here and we click on import, we come to presets and we do 2D pixel and then do re-import. We can see it's nice and it's not blurred anymore, it's the pixels. So we'll click on preset, make sure we're select 2D pixel and then do set as default for texture. Now I think if we import, let's minimize this. If we import all of our resources in, since we're making a pixel art game, we'll just drag over these two right here, this folder and this font. It should import those properly if I did my job right. Images. Yep. You can see they're all represented with pixel art now. Select them all, delete. Oops, didn't quite get that one. Okay, now click back on scene. And we're going to need to make, we can save with Control S and it'll save our battle scene. And then we can run by pressing this up here or doing F5. And it says we need to select a main scene. This is the scene that will be run when the game is first started. And we'll just do battle for now, that's fine. And you can see it's running, but this won't work for our mobile game. So we're going to need to set up some project settings to make it work properly for a mobile game. So let's come into project settings. Under window down here on display, we're going to set our width to 90 and our height to 160, I think. I think that's what we need. I'm going to check my reference project here just to make sure. Yeah, that's right. And then we'll do test width as 360 and our test height as 640. So what do these numbers mean? The width and height is the actual width and height of our game. So this is how many pixels our game is wide and how many pixels our game is tall. Test width and test height are how many pixels our game will take up inside of Windows. So if we run the game, you can see this is actually 640 pixels high and 360 pixels wide. And so it's scaling our game up because if you don't set those, then it will be tiny. So come back to project settings. We also need to set a few things down here. So for our mode, we're going to want to do 2D for stretch mode. And for aspect ratio, we're going to want to keep. So what that does is this makes sure that it does actually scale up our images. So actually, let me show you what that does. Let's turn both these off real quick. And let's not set our test width and height. Let's leave those alone. This way I can show you exactly what each thing does. So first let's turn on snap, turn off snap to grid, and turn on use pixel snap. And then I'm going to turn off all of smart snapping because we won't be using it. Okay, there. Now if we drag over our mobile RPG mockup right here, this is just a mockup for the game. Let's get it exactly where we want it. If we run the game like this, you can see that this is not what we want. First of all, it's tiny, right? And second of all, since these buttons take up so much space, it's actually kind of not working properly. That's interesting. And if we scale this up, the image stays the same size. So let's come into our project settings and let's set our test width and height like we did before. Test width 360, test height 640. So like I said before, this determines how much the window will actually take up. So now our window is the right size, but our game inside the window isn't correct. It's still tiny, right? But if we come into here and set our stretch mode to 2D, then that will stretch the view to match the size of the window. So now we're stretching properly, and this is looking a lot better. If we scale it though, it continues to stretch, right? And this isn't what we want. Let's say they're playing it on an iPad or whatever, and they get this. This is going to be ugly, right? So if we come into our project settings again and we set our aspect ratio to keep, this will add black bars on the side. So that means no matter what size of phone screen they have, it will just add a black bar on the side of the game to accommodate. And that looks much better. If they're playing on a phone that has a slightly wider screen like this, they'll just get these little black bars on the side, which will look fine. It'll look good. And so much better than stretching it. So now we've got our project all set up properly. It's looking good. So let's see what else we can do in this video, because there's not going to be very many of these videos, probably 5 or 6 or so we want to get a lot done in each one. Let's start by adding our enemy to the game. So let's add a new node, and we're going to do a node 2D, this blue one right here. And make sure you have battle selected, or else it'll add it as a child of your mobile mockup right here. You don't want to do that. Actually, yeah, that'll be fine. And we'll call this enemy. Now on our enemy, we're going to want to attach the rat sprite. So we can actually click down here. Well, if you have enemy selected, you can click down here and drag the rat sprite over to there. And then check to make sure that its transform is set to 0, 0 right here while your rat node is selected. And our enemy rat now has a sprite, and we'll call this sprite. So we've got enemy, and it has a child node of sprite. Now if we try to move this, it will move the sprite and not the enemy, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to click undo, Control Z to undo that. So what we can do instead is click this little button right here. Make sure the object's children are not selectable when your enemy node is selected. Now if we try and select this, it will move enemy and not the sprite. Not just the sprite, it actually moves the whole enemy. And we can place our enemy right here somewhere. And if we click on our mobile RPG mockup and then come into visibility, we can click on this color right here, the modulate property, and lower the alpha. And look at that. Now we can have that as a reference for when we're adding in the elements of our game, but it will be slightly transparent. So let's add our dungeon. Make sure battle is selected, drag over the dungeon. Doot. Make sure it's positioned properly. And uh-oh, our rat's gone. So the order that things are drawn in affects the depth. And so we want to move our dungeon up above to the very top. So you can just drag the sprite up to the very top. Now you can see our dungeon is there, and our rat is here, and our mock-up, we can hide and show the mock-up using this eye, and this is looking pretty good. So now on our enemy, we're also going to want to attach a label, and that will represent the enemy's health up here. So if we just click on the enemy, then attach a new node, search label, it will give us this, oops, we can't select it. We're going to have to change that. So click on this right here to make it so we can select the children. We'll drag the label up here, and we'll put 25 HP. Now this looks terrible, right? Because we don't have the proper font. But we'll be fixing that shortly. So just leave it like that for now. And we'll rename this HP label, like that. Okay. If we hide our mockup and run the game, we've got our rat. It's got 25 HP. We've got a good start. Now let's create a UI. So click on battle. Let's add a new node, and we'll use control. This will be like our base UI node that will hold all of our UI elements inside of it. You can see we've got a size here. We just want to select layout up here while our control node is selected and do full rect. That will mean it takes up the entire screen. That gives us a good start, and we'll rename this UI. Save. Now let's add, as a child of this, we'll add a new button node. So add a new node, and to make sure you're adding it as a child, make sure UI is selected. Button. And we'll grab this, drag it out, bring it down here somewhere. That should be good. And then we'll call this sword. Perfect. We can save the game and run. We've got a button we can press, but it doesn't do anything, and we can attack the enemy. So let's write our first bit of code here. We're going to click on battle, and we're going to click on attach script right here. That will attach a new script to our battle node. We can choose what this script is named. Battle.gd looks good. And what language we'll be using GD script. So we'll just create. It fills in some default stuff that you might need, but we're not going to need any of that. So let's just get rid of it and save with Control S. Now, how can we, the question here is, how do we get our button right here, our sword button? Let's actually name it that, sword button. How do we get our sword button to tell the battle script when it's been clicked? And the solution is what is called signals. Now, a signal allows two nodes to talk to each other. And of course, you can have one node call a function from another node instead of using a signal. And my general rule, somebody on Reddit posted this somewhere, said it was their rule. I think it's a pretty good rule. Generally, when you're using Godot, when I'm using Godot, I signal up and call down. So you can see that the sword button is a child of battle. And so in order to talk to battle, it has to go up the tree. And so I would use a signal to tell battle when I've been pressed. However, if I wanted battle to talk to sword button, I wouldn't use a signal. I would just get access to the node directly in battle and then call the function directly. And of course, that's not a hard rule. Because sometimes you're going to have elements that don't really go well together. But like stuff with, like our enemy has a sprite. If my enemy ever wanted to change sprites, I wouldn't use a signal. I would just have the enemy access sprite directly and then alter the sprite, the texture on the sprite directly from enemy. So let's use a signal for this because we're going up. If you click on sword button, come over to node, you can see the signals available here, and there's a lot of them. The only one we need for now is pressed, so double click on pressed. Now we get to choose what node we want to talk with. Well, we want to talk with battle. And we get to choose whether or not we're going to make a function. And generally you do want to make a function. The only time you don't is when you already have a function, when you've already made one. But we want to make one, so we're going to do, and this is the name of the function it will create. So we can just do connect. And you can see it automatically makes a function for us called onSwordButtonPressed. So we know that this will happen when the sword button has been pressed. And it opens us up into battle.gd. So we're opened up into battle.gd. So inside of here, we're just going to print attack. And this will just display, this code will display here in the output. So we can run our game and click this, and you can see each time we click sword, it prints attack down here. So let's try something better. Let's try getting access to our health label right here and updating its text. So we can get access to another node if it's a child. So this is the opposite, right? Remember how I said you signal up, call down? Well, now we're calling down. But in order to do that, we need direct access to this node. And to do that, we'll create a variable, call it HP label, and we can get access to that node by typing the $, and you can see it lists all of the children of the battle. And we have mobile RPG mockup and HP label and everything here that's a child. So we'll do HP label like that. And now we have access. However, we're getting an error message. And this is because we're trying to get access to this node, but when the game runs, the node might not be actually in the scene yet. Because right when you start the game, it has to initialize and create everything in the game, right? But this piece of code will be run before everything's been initialized, so it might not be ready. But there's a shortcut you can do to make sure that it's ready called onReadyVar. It's a special keyword that you put before variables that need to get access to other nodes in the scene. That's the only time you use it. We need to get access to this node in the scene. It might not be ready. The node might not be there when this code runs. So we can wait. This just makes sure that we wait until it for sure is ready and then get access. Now instead of printing attack, we can do HP label.text, and we can set it to whatever we want. Let's set it to 15 equals 15 HP. And this is a bit silly because obviously the first time we attack, it will look like we dealt damage, but then it won't ever work again. But that's okay because we've got the very basics. So this is what I mean. Signal up, so we're signaling up to battle, but then when battle needs to alter the label here, we call down. And this is a very simplified example of that because this won't be how it's set up when we get farther in this. This isn't really the best system to go with, especially if you want to have lots of different buttons that can attack and stuff. We're going to get a little bit fancier later in the series, but this is the very basics for you. And this is going to be it for today. This is all we're going to do. So thank you all so much for watching this. If you enjoyed this video, be sure and give it a like. If you have any questions, comment down in the comments. I'll try my best to help answer your questions. And once again, check out my Kickstarter. Check out, if you're interested in learning Godot, I'm doing a Kickstarter for a Godot course. Go watch it, see if it's something you would be interested in, and if it is, then pledge your support. And in the next video, we will be doing theming. So we will start creating our default theme that will allow us, well, basically it will make our text and buttons not look like they're terrible. And so we'll be doing that in the next video. Thank you all for watching, and I will talk to you all later.